Now, recently, the enormous leak known as the Panama Papers happened, where, of course, millions of files on the offshore holdings of political leaders, dictators, and prime ministers alike were actually given to different journalistic outlets. They're given to the BBC, they were given to, originally obtained by a German newspaper, right? And I've got more details on how that happened. But, BBC, The Guardian, etc., different places have received these leaked papers. And so these files, these leaked files, 11.5 million of them, are essentially details of the hidden financial dealings of people who have engaged in fraud, drug trafficking, as well as just people who had legit business, right? People who are billionaires, celebrities, sports stars, and more. They have a pretty varied and huge clientele. Now, who am I talking about? Well, the company. The company behind it all is Mossack Fonseca. Now, that is a Panama-based law firm that has helped, it's been alleged to help wealthy and powerful people not only hide their money, but also to launder it. Basically evading billions of dollars in taxes to their respective nations. Now, of course, that's terrible. Because whenever rich people, corporations, dodge their own taxes, well, they shift that burden onto the people. Or the government ends up facing deficits, having to cut social programs, et cetera, so rich people can hold on to more of their money. But anyway, now more about the company. Now, this is reported by the ICIJ. The firm, Mossack Fonseca, has offices in more than 35 locations around the globe and is one of the world's top creators of shell companies. Now, shell companies are corporate structures that can be used to hide the ownership of assets. Now, in all the papers together reveal information of about more than 214,000 offshore companies connected to individuals in more than 200 different countries and territories. So, of that basic overview, I want to give you guys a bit of a condensed breakdown of what we know about the dealings, who they belong to, how big this leak is, and of course how it's connected to trade, the Panama trade deal, as well as the TPP. All right, now, how big is this? Well, this is considered one of the biggest leaks ever. Once again, 11.5 million documents were essentially given over to journalists. Now, basically at this point, I could probably stop calling it a leak. It's more like a flood. It's just a flood. This is way, way bigger than Snowden's leaks, right? Way bigger. I mean, if you want to compare file sizes, well, the WikiLeaks cables in size were about 1 to 7 gigabytes of data. The Panama Papers, however, that flood of information is in the terabytes range of data. Now, anybody who's into data, who knows computer terms, knows that a terabyte is very, very large. A lot of information, especially if it's just papers, data, text. It takes a lot of text to equal a terabyte. Huge. There's literally millions of documents to sift through. Now, analyzing this leak is going to take journalists a very long time. They're going to be very, very busy. Very, very busy with all that data there. So, that gets me to the question of how did we get it? Well, it turns out there's an unnamed whistleblower that contacted a German newspaper. And in this German newspaper, there's a reporter named Bastian Obermeier. Now, this is out of some spycraft novel, I swear. So this is going to sound fantastic. But he was contacted on his computer via an encrypted message. Now, what did this message say? It said, and it just popped up on this guy's screen. Hello, this is John Doe. Are you interested in data? Are you interested in data? Now, if you're sitting at your computer, if you're a journalist, and you see this message pop up, and you don't know who it is, they ask you, are you interested in data? If you're a journalist, if you're really interested in getting at the truth, what's your first inclination? Fuck yeah! Give me the data. I'll be more than happy to take that data. And that's almost exactly what he said. Now, before he got access to all this, the person who sent the message, the whistleblower, said, quote, there are a couple of conditions. Before I give you this data, there are some conditions. First, my life is in danger. So, we will only ever chat over encrypted files. And we will never, ever, ever have a meeting. It feels like I'm in like a spy novel or something of what I'm reading. And look, let's be honest. All of these precautions are perfectly reasonable when you understand just the magnitude of this leak. He or she had every reason to fear for their lives. Now, I reported yesterday that this company has done some shady business with dictators. You had a friend of Putin setting up shell companies to launder money. Now, we don't know if it's connected to Putin or not. We don't know the details quite yet of if Putin knew about it or not. But this guy was so close to Putin that he was named the godfather to Putin's daughter. That's how close they were. Now, they also did business with Muammar Gaddafi, former dictator of Libya, as well as Bashar al-Assad. Pretty dangerous people you're doing business with. Pretty sure these people would not like their secrets to come out. Well, Gaddafi aside, because he's dead. I'm not sure he cares. But regardless, it's not just those guys, but you also got the King of Saudi Arabia. So you've got a lot of powerful people involved. Very powerful heads of state. And I want to get into more of those details later because there's a list of people that I'm going to name later on that are involved with these files. But first, I want to tell you what's interesting about this when it comes to international law. Now, it turns out that some of what they did isn't exactly illegal. It's not moral, but not illegal either. And that's interesting. Now, what they essentially did is that they allowed the wealthiest members of Western society to shield their financial assets from taxes, and in many cases, divorce or bankruptcy settlements, by taking advantage of different shell companies as well as tax havens. You know, you've heard of the Cayman Islands. Big tax haven. Huge. Now, and the amazing thing about this, what we think as members of the public should be illegal, well, people in power make legal through terrible trade deals in order to get away with hiding their money. Now, for example, journalist Glenn Greenwald said this, quote, proving that certain behavior is legal does not prove that it is ethical or just. That's because corrupted political systems, by definition, often protect and legalize exactly the behavior that is most unjust. Vital journalism does not only expose lawbreaking, it also highlights how corrupted political and legal systems can be co-opted by the most powerful in order to legally sanction atrocities and destructive behavior that serves their interests, typically with little or no public awareness that it's been done. I think he summed it up pretty well, what's going on. And how does it exactly get to be sort of legalized or at least accepted? Through trade deals. And I'll get to that later. But that's pretty much it. You have the wealthy and power that have been playing us for years, decades, fucking us over by making rules that serve their interests and not ours. And how does that affect us? Well, when they don't pay their taxes, we do. That burden falls on the people. And it's no wonder that people are angry. People are pissed off. And wealth inequality is through the roof. They're hiding all their money. They're shielding it from taxes. And that's going to increase economic inequality. And people, as I said, people are getting ripped off because we're no longer getting our money's worth in our taxes. We're getting nothing in return. We're just paying for what the rich should have been paying. They should have been paying their taxes all along, and now we're covering for them. Those are the real welfare queens, the rich and the powerful. Now, Speaking of the rich and powerful, who are they? Well, here's just some of the world leaders whose family members and close associates are alleged to have been implicated or have been directly tied into this itself or themselves. Now, David Cameron, British Prime Minister, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, Saudi Arabian King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, South African President Jacob Zuma, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Chinese President Xi Jinping, Icelandic Prime Minister Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, interestingly enough, the Icelandic Prime Minister is actually now the former Icelandic prisoner. Breaking news today, he stepped down. He's resigned. Gone. The first casualty of the Panama Papers. But look at the rest of them, man. These are world leaders. Look at Putin, for example. He's using his propaganda arm to downplay this. Oh, it's just a Western smear. That's all it is. It's a Western smear. Don't pay attention to that. That's just the CIA. They're blaming the CIA for this shit. Amazing. But hey, it's Putin. What do you expect? And now, like I said, in the case of former Icelandic Prime Minister Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson, he bought a company called Wintris. Now, this was during Iceland's financial collapse, and he used this shell company to funnel his money so that it wouldn't be affected by the crash. And then he sold that company to his wife for $1. That's amazing. That's amazing. And not only is he gone, but Iceland's president has also called to dissolve the government, parliament. That is some major shit. Iceland is not fucking around. Not at all. Now, with all these leaders named, you got to be wondering, what the fuck's America? We're super corrupt here. No doubt. Where is it? Where's America? How come no Americans have been named? Well, that's not entirely true. There's actually one that was named, Mariana Alzetsky. Now, she's just a millionaire who put up a shell company to hide her money from taxes. But American leaders, they have not been named yet. But don't worry. That German newspaper says more is coming. More is coming. Ooh. Now, let's get on to how American leaders, through trade deals, have actually made this somewhat legal or at least acceptable. Well, in 2012, we passed the United States Panama Trade Promotion Agreement. Essentially, what it was is that it was a standalone free trade agreement with Panama. Now, according to Lori Wallach, the director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch, quote, nearly 5 years after the U.S. Panama Free Trade Agreement vote, the Panama Paper leak proves once again how entirely cynical and meaningless are the lavish promises made by American presidents and corporations about the economic benefits and policy reforms from trade agreements. Now, what do they mean by that? Well, when they tried to pass this free trade agreement, U.S. and Panama, they were saying, look, it'll help American jobs. And it will help us crack down on offshore companies and tax evasion. Apparently, hasn't seemed to have done any of that. And that's what this woman is pointing out. In fact, the top promise of this trade deal, of this free trade agreement, was that it would end Panama's crime secrecy protections and tax haven money laundering activities. However, as I said, this leak shows that if anything, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. In fact, the free trade agreement's investor protections and official U.S. stamp of approval have increased inflows of dirty money to Panama. And according to the International Business Times, President Obama and Hillary Clinton ended up pushing for this deal amid warnings that this would happen. This very thing would happen. Now, this is according to David Sirota, writing in the International Business Times. Quote, the Panama FTA, pushed forward by Obama and Clinton, watchdog group said, effectively barred the United States from cracking down on questionable activities, instead of requiring concessions of the Panamanian government on banking rules and regulations. Combating tax haven abuse in Panama could violate the agreement. Should the U.S. embark on such an endeavor, it could be exposed to fines from international authorities. You're essentially putting a roadblock or a cockblock in the way of trying to crack down on these havens since we signed that agreement. We can't do jack shit about it because of this agreement, because we could get fined for trying to cut down on their crime. That's amazing. That's another reason why these free trade agreements are utter crap. Utter crap. Now, furthermore, he writes, the FDA would undermine existing U.S. policy tools against tax haven activity, warned consumer watchdog group Public Citizen at the time, saying the agreement would encourage corporations to thwart any U.S. efforts to combat financial secrecy. The group also noted that the U.S. government contractors, as well as major financial firms supported by taxpayer bailouts, stood to gain from the trade deal's provisions that could make it harder to crack down on financial secrecy. Banks, large corporations that we bailed out with our tax money push for this so they could hide their money overseas through shell companies so that they didn't have to pay their taxes. We bailed them out with our tax money. They hide theirs so that we have to pay their fair share. And it's all because of these trade deals. I wonder if money in politics had anything to do with our politicians, or I should say their lobbyists, greasing the wheels for our politicians to pass these bullshit trade deals. I wonder if that has anything to do with that. The role of money in politics. No, couldn't have. What are you talking about, you liberal? Free trade agreements are great. In fact, we want you to support the TPP because we want more of this. We want more corporate control. Jesus Christ, man, how stupid do they think we are? How stupid do they think with it? Do they think we are? They must think we're fucking stupid. And here's the thing. The Democratic Party is not on our side when it comes to these deals. I just showed you Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama pushed for this deal. But it's not just them. It was other Democrats. For example, according to 2009 emails sent to Hillary Clinton by her top State Department aide, high-ranking then-Senator Max Baucus, he was pushing for passage of the Panama and Colombia Free Trade Pacts, along with Charlie Rangel. And in this email, he said, look, the president, he just got elected. He needs to use his star power so that we can pass this trade deal for Panama. That's going to be awesome for corporations. The Democratic Party is also here to screw you. And with the aid of major, large corporations, they also lobbied for the deal. Among others, News Corp. News Corp wanted this. And Obama and Clinton just signed right on. Yeah, sure. Here you go. Here's your trade deal. News Corp had 136 Panamanian subsidiaries. Also, they could hide their money from U.S. taxation. Now, to be fair, not all Democrats were on board. You had then Representative Mike Michaud. Now, Mike Michaud actually wrote a scathing op-ed in The Hill. And this was just 2 months after Obama was sworn in 2009. He said, quote, talk about a double whammy, another job-killing Bush trade agreement. And with the country that a Government Accountability Office study identified as one of only 8 countries and the only current prospective free trade agreement partner that was listed on all the major U.S. and international tax haven watchdog lists. We knew that Panama was doing this sort of shit. We knew it. They were on watchdog lists. So instead of stopping it, we enabled them through this free trade agreement. And we handicapped ourselves from being able to stop them. Now, you want to guess who else was against this when this came up? Bernie Sanders. Watch him pretty much predict the Panama Papers all the way back in 2011. Take a look.
And lastly, let me just say a brief word about Panama and the Panama Free Trade Agreement. Panama's entire annual economic output is only $26.7 billion a year, or about 0.2% of the U.S. economy. No one can legitimately make the claim that approving this free trade agreement will significantly increase American jobs. Then why would we be considering a standalone free trade agreement with Panama, tiny little country? Well, it turns out that Panama is a world leader when it comes to allowing wealthy Americans and large corporations to evade U.S. taxes by stashing their cash in offshore tax haven. And the Panama Free Trade Agreement will make this bad situation much worse. Each and every year, the wealthiest people in our country and the largest corporations evade about $100 billion in U.S. taxes through abusive and illegal offshore tax havens in Panama and in other countries. According to Citizens for Tax Justice, and I quote, "A tax haven has one of three characteristics. It has no income tax or a very low rate income tax. It has bank secrecy laws, and it has a history of non-cooperation with other countries on exchanging information about tax matters." Panama has all three of those. They are probably the worst. And that's from, end of quote, from the Citizens for Tax Justice.
You should have listened to Bernie. He was absolutely on point about Panama. And yet, here we have corporatist Democrats pushing for this. If you think the Democrats are on your side, they're really not. They're on the side of the corporations. And the only time that they are on your side is when their interests, the interests of the corporations, or when they need your vote. And it's the same with Republicans, man. They ain't on anybody's side but their own. It's us versus the establishment. And the establishment loves this. Loves these deals. Of course, now that it's exposed, of course you're going to have President Obama going out there and doing something about it. But unless this came out, they're going to stay quiet. But now, I mentioned the Panama trade deal. Very, very important to the story. But it's also important to contrast that with our new free trade deal that's in the works, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In fact, Lori Wallach told Alternet this, quote, "Now the same cast of characters is making equally outlandish promises of the benefits of the TPP, while increasingly past supporters of these pacts are joining long-term critics in saying that the TPP will not deliver economic gains for most Americans or improvement in labor, environment, or human rights policies among its signatories. And on top of that, it's going to give corporations even more power. The Panama trade deal has been a disaster for America, and so will the TPP. It's just a fact. And look, that's just one way to highlight the significance of the Panama Papers going forward. This is the story of the year, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. And if you are not angry yet, then you will be once they start releasing the names of American businessmen, American corporations, and politicians. Now, these politicians involved, look, hopefully, once we find out who these people are, hopefully we'll be able to vote them out and get the corruption out of our government and maybe some new rules in. And we can only do that if we all stand up and we let them know that the rich and powerful, look, their free ride ends today. We're done with your bullshit. It's time for the political revolution.